Is this the security camera?
Okay, yeah, just so you guys know, I am being observed by Mrs. Goff as part of my student teaching, and also being filmed so that Mrs. Depper from Chicago can observe me. So you guys can say hi, Mrs. Depper.
Hi, Mrs. Depper.
Welcome to California.
It's pretty sunny here.
Okay. Alright, so we're going to get started with the lesson though. But first, Grandma, I'll give you a chance to spout your experience with Titanic.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
That's it? That's all you gotta say?
Titanic 3D.
Okay, well.
Titanic 3D.
Alright, so you guys have had Brandon teaching you guys for the last couple of days, starting Friday. So I just want to go over Brandon, and I'll just say some good things that you did, some things that you need to work on. Okay, this is part of any teaching experience. Again, this is what Mrs. Goff and Mrs. Depper and Mrs. Price help. You know, they all tell me, hey, you need to work on this. Hey, you're doing a good job with this. So it's just part of the experience, Brandon. So, Brandon, for you, you're very passionate in your teaching. You're very excited. It's always good to see whenever a teacher is excited about the material. It's contagious, right? I mean, you guys naturally are a little more engaged than if somebody comes in and, all right, what are we teaching today? Chapter 15, okay. Open up your Bibles. I guess we'll read from that. You know, if you come in and you're like, all right, guys, today we're going chapter 15. We're going to look at it. It's good for the students. You were very well prepared. You did a great job on your PowerPoint, and despite many delays and the one day, you still got through all the material, which is a very, very difficult challenge for teachers. Things that we need to work on, and this is something that was talked about already. You're very sharp for the rest of the class. You know, and I get it, especially when you're trying to get through material and people are asking questions. And anytime you're challenged as a teacher, and this is something you guys need to be aware of too, you know, it sort of affects our pride. Like, well, you know, because Brandon, I saw you were working very hard on this, and so it's tough to hear that, hey, this is wrong, or hey, I think you're wrong on this. So even if he wasn't wrong, it still hurts a little bit to hear that and have to go back and try to fix that. And so, Mrs. Price, to talk to you, Brandon, about as God's witnesses, right? It's so important that we have a good attitude, and that she talked about how people will be turned off if you're, I guess, expressing anger or hostility towards them. At the same time, you guys did, I guess, a good job of what a non-Christian might do if you're preaching the gospel, but you guys yourself were a little sharp with Brandon. I mean, it almost seemed at times like you guys were looking for any error that he had, and you guys were bringing it up. Okay? I get it, that can be fun, but as Christians, guys, we need to be helping our brother, right? Even if he's making a mistake, we need to rise above that, and we need to be able to help him out. Come alongside, right? We've been talking about Barnabas. That's what he does. He comes alongside and he helps and he lifts them up. But yeah, so something I would say, Brandon, even as you're trying to get through material, understand even if you don't, it's not the end of the world, right? Yeah. It's possible I won't get through a lot of material, which stinks because I spent a lot of time working on it, right? But it's more important that the students get something out of it, and then you can have more in-depth conversations, and it's a time of just growth. So, yeah, like I was saying, we want to make sure that people feel loved. Non-Christians, guys, they are judgmental. They have not been redeemed, and they're not going to have a whole lot of room for error with you. If sharp with them, that they already don't want to talk to you about spirituality and religion and Jesus. Alright? So if you start making them mad, just in a general sense, there's going to be no reason for them to want to hang out with you and talk about this stuff. So always remember, God is in control. God's guiding you. Holy Spirit is with us. And so, just good thing to remember. And finally, and this is probably for everyone, so it's probably too late now, but just in general for your next teaching experience, Brandon, there were a couple of times, and as well as the last group, I noticed, but there were a couple of times where you weren't sure where you got your answer from. It's always good to just know where you got your information, that we can quickly bring it up. Yeah, I remember reading that here. So even if you're wrong, at least at least you can go to it and say, oh, oops, I misinterpreted that, or I misread that. But it makes you look a lot more intelligent and a lot more credible if you're able to say, yeah, I got it here, So again, probably everyone will struggle with that, because you guys probably weren't writing down where you got certain things, but just a tip for next time. So, okay, so we will go through Brandon's PowerPoint again, and we'll just take some extra time going through the information. What city of Judea do you think certain men came from? It was Jerusalem. Okay, everybody, yeah, make sure you get your workbooks that you're filling this out. When are those due, Ms. Harris? Those due on Monday when they get back? Okay, so yeah, you guys want to make sure you guys get this. So, 2, what problems had arisen according to verses 1 and 2? Men said, unless you are circumcised and according to the custom taught by Moses, you cannot be saved. Okay? Brandon is right here. The book doesn't go into as much detail, and so I'm glad that you brought up the circumcision. That was the big thing. Okay? They said, hey, as part of our Jewish faith, we had to be circumcised to sort of show that covenant with God and show that we're followers of God. They need to too. And no, that's not what the Bible teaches, right?
Yes.
That's not what Romans talks about. That's not what Paul says. So, yeah. So, number 3, how did the brothers of Phoenicia and Samaria feel about the Gentiles receiving salvation? They were happy. That is right. They rejoiced. You can put, that's what technically the book has, but yes, they were happy. Okay? When these men got to Jerusalem, what did they report? They reported everything God had done through them. Yes, that?
Oh,
Okay. Okay? And we had talked about, as missionaries, how many of you have missionaries come to your church and every couple of years and talk about what they've been doing? Okay. Nobody? Nobody else? That's interesting. Okay. Well, I know at my home church they do that a lot. People that your church is supporting, spending money on to help them do the mission. They'll come every now and then and just kind of update you on what's going on. And we'll talk about this a little bit later, but that's sort of an accountability thing. Okay, I mean that's sort of what this is too, with me being filmed. It's almost an accountability. I have certain requirements that I have to hit, and turn stuff in, lesson plans, that type of thing, and that's all a part of accountability. To make sure that I'm doing my job in my ministry here. So yes, so they reported everything God had done. Why does this not surprise you that the Pharisees required strict adherence to Jewish law for salvation? They were the religious lawmakers and enforcers of the Jewish religion. That is correct. Where were the Pharisees coming from? And that's, again, they're used to all these laws that they have to follow and to abide by. And so now they're saying they were just used to having to do all these things, right? And now all of a sudden, Jesus comes along and says, no. And Paul explains this and says, it's by faith alone that we're saved. So, Yeah, make sure you guys get that. What was the meeting of verses 6 through 7 pleasant? This is one that we had dispute on.
Yeah.
Brandon said it was pleasant, but Brandon has since said, no, after rereading it, it is not. And it's true, it was not. Paul was a prideful man, right? And he was a Pharisee. I mean, he calls himself that. And so he comes, and now coming from this place, he says, no, I was wrong, and you guys are wrong. And the Pharisees, who we know are prideful because they saw all these miracles that Jesus was doing, and yet they denied that he was the Christ. They denied that he was the Messiah. And so, with that, they just were butting heads because Paul had been there, and he's seeing it from this point of view, and they're seeing it from their Pharisaical point of view, and they're both prideful people. And Paul's a fiery guy. I mean, he hates this idea now that the Pharisees hold to, right? He says it's by faith alone that we are saved. None of this work stuff. None of this will help us attain salvation. We can't do that. And so, I want to talk about that a little bit. What do you guys notice with Paul here and his fieriness? I mean, because some people would say, because he was killing Christians. I mean, that's how much he was in favor of the other side. Right? So, what did God do about this fieriness that Paul had? This passion of his. Nika?
Didn't heal. Wait, what did God do?
What did God do with it? Did he say, okay, now that you're a follower of me, what did you do with that? Things are changing. But in what way, I guess? Does that make sense?
I mean, like, what did God do when he was on their side?
No. I'm talking about this character trait of Paul. How has that been affected now as a believer? Colin?
Well, because he formerly knew the philosophy of like the Jewish like Pharisees and stuff, he's able to apply it to his new faith, and now he's seeing how largely the gap between the truth and